Time's up. Pencils down. The exam is over. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I'm probably giving you flashbacks of being in school and being at the end of a test and feeling like you didn't know the answers. And I just said time's up. And now all of a sudden you've got night sweats and you're like, wait a second, I haven't been in school in years. No, I'm actually talking about Time's Up, the album by the amazing, incredible, talented New York band Living Colour. This album was their second album and one of these really big, influential albums for me. And I think there's going to be some surprises for those of you who have listened to this podcast and be like, oh, wow, Jacob likes that. But we're going to get into it. So let's talk about Living Colour, Time's Up. Wait, I did that all wrong. You know my setup for the show is it's time to talk about Living Colour, Time's Up. Let's go.
Things are going to change. I can feel it.
If this going to be that kind of party, I'm going
Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records with Jacob Gibbons.
There are these dogs barking like crazy across the street. I am so hoping that it doesn't get picked up by my podcast microphone. But who knows? We'll just have the dogs barking and I can either try to take it out or it's just part of the show. But hey, before we get going on this whole thing, I did want to tell you about DistroKid. You know I've talked to you about them before, and I have those savings for you so you can upload your music and save 30% off your first year. distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. They have an app. You can share your profits with your other musicians in the band. You can stream on all these services, get your music launched out in the world. And if you use my special link, you're getting 30% off your first year. So you have to use it. You have to. I insist. But that's all I wanted to tell you about before we got into things. And I also just wanted to thank anybody who's stopping by here for the first time. There's a lot of people that are discovering my podcast now after so many years. I've been making this show, I think, since 2022. I think it goes back that far. But in those early days, I wasn't making that many episodes. I was just doing it more as a hobby. But now, as being a part of Pantheon Podcasts, I do make at least 2 shows a month. I'd love to get to a point where I do more than that, but that's all I can handle right now. But I'm happy that you're here. Yes, this is Waterproof Records, and I talk about my favorite albums, but I also have guests on the show to talk about their favorite albums. And recently, I had the Kevin Martin from Candlebox episode. If you haven't seen that one yet, that one's in a studio. I'm going to be doing a lot more of those interviews in person with some artists, and I have some exciting guests coming up. But I can't keep making this show if we don't spread the word and let people know about it. So make sure you're telling your friends about Waterproof Records with Jacob Givens. And also comment or leave those stars on, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts. And then I think you can comment now on Spotify. So go in there and say, oh my God, this is the best podcast in history. You don't have to say that, but if you wanted to, it would be nice. You know what I'm saying? For those listening, I just winked at the audience. But that's enough self-promotion. It's time to talk about Living Colour, Time's Up. This album came out in 1990, August 28th, I'm pretty sure. Let me check my facts here to make sure. Yes, August 28th, 1990 on Epic Records. And the original lineup, the OG lineup, is Corey Glover on vocals, Vernon Reid on guitar, Muzz Skillings on bass, and then you have Will Calhoun on drums. And I remember memorizing those names as a kid. Those were the founding members of Living Colour. Well, it was founded by Vernon Reid in 1984. He started the iterations of Living Colour with the English spelling because he was British born, and he called it the band, the project, Living Colour. And I think initially he called it in 84, 85, Vernon Reid's Living Colour. I think that was the name. And then he settled on this lineup of the band in 1986. And then that was the band until around 1992. And that's when Muzz left the band and they brought in Doug Wimbish and he played. But it wasn't a bad split. It was just moving on, pursuing other things. I think that Muzz has come back many times to play with the band. He got thanked in later releases. Doug Wimbish has been, so they swap in and out. Everybody's friendly. Everybody's cool with each other. But this is the during the recording, it is Corey, Vernon, Muzz, Will, Calhoun. And when they come together, their big hit, 1988, Cult of Personality, and their album Vivid. And if you're a huge fan of this band, you might be curious as to why I'm not covering that album, Vivid, especially since Cult of Personality is how this band was introduced to the entire world. Again, it's all about when the music falls in your lap, right? You've heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. You really can't choose when something is going to become the soundtrack for a time in your life. And even though Cult of Personality was huge, and I love that song. I think that song is amazing. I know it's become an anthem for so many things. I think it's used in wrestling as somebody's walk-in song or something like that. I think they even played it for that CM Punk. Am I saying that right? I don't know my wrestling. But anyway, that album, while great, I heard the single on MTV, 1988, 89. I am 10 years old, loved it, but I'm not in the habit of going out and getting cassette tapes easily. You know what I mean? It's like one of those things, you like a song on MTV, you hear it on the radio. But at this stage of the game, I'm pretty young, and I have like the Beach Boys' greatest hits on cassette tape. And so I don't buy Vivid, but by the time we get to Time's Up, this is where the tide is shifting, and I'm starting to want to own more pieces of music, cassettes at this time. So if I'm with a cousin or friend and they've got Living Color, maybe they'll give me a dub of it on a cassette and I can hear it. And I'm pretty sure the first copy of Time's Up I got was a dub. And I'll tell you why. Because when I get to the song Fight the Fight on this record, I still can hear how the tape runs out at the very end in my head. Because that's how I first heard the song over and over again, was the dub ran out of room right at the tail end of Fight the Fight. And then when you'd flip it over, that song would begin at it would play like the last few seconds. It was literally so close to the end, but there's that gap there in my memory as to when the tape ended from one side to the next. And that's why I know I had a dubbed copy of this album. But again, this is interesting because if you go listen to this album, I'll never forget when I was driving in the car with my wife and I started playing the song Love Rears Up Its Ugly Head. This was ages ago. And I was like, oh, I love this song. And she looked at me and she was like, this is surprising. She was like, this is a surprising sound that you would be into. And she was right, because not really in my wheelhouse. Look, I can love and respect all sorts of different genres of music. I can see the talent, I can see the artistry, but there's definitely genres and styles and music that just isn't in my rotation. You know, it's just not something that I include as a favorite. If there's live music somewhere in the world and it's in any genre, I can get into pretty much anything if music is being played live in public, in a venue, at an event. I can find the joy in just sounds. But there's so much on this album that really goes outside of what would be Jacob's comfort zone as a teenager and as an adult. And I can only attribute that to this album is before a lot of my tastes have formed and solidified. If that makes any sense. It was early. It was pre-game. Because once you get to be 13, 14 and you discover, I really like guitar that's heavy like this, or I really like vocals, or I love loud, quiet, loud, or whatever it is, those totally run to the front of the line, front of the race. And then you don't have much room left for things that aren't the loves. And then as you grow older, you hear different types of music and you go, I can appreciate that and I like this and whatever. But Living Color, Time's Up, we're going to go through this and I'm going to play snippets. And if you've never heard this album before, it's just a mix hodgepodge of so many different types of music. Jazz, fusion, R&B, rock, metal, funk. Did I say hip hop? Did I say, like African tribal music? It's just got everything. And for those of you who grew up when I did, the thing that was so cool about seeing Living Color and Cult of Personality the first time on MTV was you were like, it's 4 black guys. And what I mean by that is it was this landscape of music of MTV was so at least what was given to us, so predominantly white, especially metal, hard rock. So when you saw it, it was really inspiring and like, that's cool. And the irony here is, rock is a music that was taken and, kind of borrowed in a lot of ways by Elvis Presley, which we'll get into on this album, and then given credit as white man's music, but that's not true at all. So to be these four guys from New York and really having unbelievable chops as musicians, all of them are so talented. The skill, the knowledge of the instrument, the scales, the stop starts, that all the timing, the wealth of knowledge in this band is insane. And what they put out there for people like me to go, wow, look, four black guys in a rock band. I can't even imagine how inspiring that must have been for any person of color at a young age to be an aspiring musician in this genre or any genre that is, but to see them on MTV must have been like, hell yes. And I'm glad. Probably inspired decades of musicians to come after that, people of color that would be like, if they can do it, I can do it. And I'm so glad that Living Color exists for that reason. But this band, like I said, Vivid is their breakout, and it's a good album. It's a very, very good, solid album, but I just don't have the miles on that one like I got on Time's Up. And the memories and feelings that this album elicits when I listen to it is just insane. I thought to do this record for the podcast, and if you don't know, I have subscribers on Instagram. I don't offer subscriptions on any other platform, but on Instagram I do. And I've got this amazing crew of subscribers that have been with me forever. We have a chat called the Waterproof Crew, and I get to talk to them and they can ask questions, and they've all formed friendships with each other. And there's some subscribers that don't go into the chat, and that because it's not required. You can come in or out if you want on the subscription. I only offer it because it's just a way for me to kind of build a sense of community. And so when I decided to come up with this as the album I was going to do, I pop quizzed the subscribers. I was like, okay, I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to see if you can guess it. And the question I asked them, I said, it's really the first rock band that introduced me to ideas about politics, race, inequality, those kind of things. So like the instinct in the chat, of course, is talking about Rage Against the Machine. And I made sure to specify that it was rock band. So everybody was taking their guesses. And it was really fun to see because some people were like, Public Enemy, but that's not rock. And I was like, yeah, young Jacob knew kids. I knew kids in 6th grade that listened to Public Enemy. I knew 911 is a joke, but I hadn't really glommed on to hip hop. And I've talked about that on the show before, rap or hip hop. And then other people said like The Clash. And I was like, while I would have known, should I stay or should I go? Or Rock the Casbah. I don't think I was making those connections yet. And there was a couple other great, people listed punk bands. But again, I wasn't that cool. There's one thing that you should know about me growing up. I wasn't cool. I might have great taste in music, but I'm not a cool kid. And I think that that's maybe why my videos work. You know what I mean? Because if I was cool, then I think the tendency would become to be gatekeepy and elitist and like pretend that I know everything. I think the only reason why this works is because I have good music taste, according to your opinion of me, but I'm not a cool guy. I'm a regular guy. I'm a guy who was tormented by, Christian household, wanting to listen to music that was controversial at the time, but also tried to do right by his parents. I was a kid who was kind to my fellow classmates, but didn't really run with a popular crowd, got along with a lot of people, was in theater, kind of dorky, but I loved music, playing guitar, bands. It was such a huge part of my life growing up. And how did I get on this, that I wasn't cool? Oh, that I'm not cool. So they were naming bands, and I was like, man, that would be really cool if I was like rocking some fucking Fugazi and Bad Brains and like amazing early punk, and I had knowledge of politics and racial tension from that. But, you know, I'm pretty young in 1990. This is, by the time this album comes out, I am just turning 12. Yeah, 12 years old. So I'm 12, and I get my hands on Living Colour's Time's Up. And I'm going to say, first and foremost, my favorite memory of this album, and Joel, my brother, I don't think he listens to the podcast, and that's okay. He's lived with me his entire life, and he has stuck with me. But my brother loved this album just as much as I did. And we were nerdy kids, and he would have been, 14, and I was 12, or maybe he was 15, because anyway, it doesn't matter. And we didn't have long hair, but I remember he put on this tape in his room, and Time's Up comes on, and he has basically like not a bandana, it's like a headband, but it has a long tie, right? So like what Rambo would put around his head, right? And you tie in the back. But the ropes that tie in the back are pretty long, I would say 8 inches off your head. And he turns it around and he puts the headband on his head, and the two ties are hanging down in front like he's got hair in front of his eyes. And this is so funny to me. And he puts on Time's Up, and it just totally opens up with like a Bad Brains, like kind of punk, hardcore, drum beat, really high energy. He hits play, and he just starts like headbanging with those things, feeling like he's got hair in front of his eyes. And I would say that this would be embarrassing for my brother, but nothing embarrasses my brother. He doesn't give a shit. So he would crack up about this. So he's headbanging with the strands in front of his face like this, and he's like moving all over the room, like flailing like he's in a pit. So he's like running into his bed, and he's running into his dresser, and he's like running into the door, and I'm just watching him. I'm like watching him, and I'm like half kind of chuckling, and I'm like really excited by just the unbelievable intensity that he's giving me in our little Oklahoma house. He's just moshing around to Time's Up as it's going, just headbanging with those things in front of his face. And every time I hit play on this album, I think of my brother doing that for Time's Up, for the opening track, and it just brings me right back to being a kid again, and that feeling like we didn't have long hair. We wanted to, like, Corey Glover, lead singer, had those awesome long, dreads, and the way his hair was, and he would just, whip his hair around. And we wanted that so bad. We wanted hair to headbang with, and we couldn't. So I love you, Joel, and I love thinking about you headbanging to Time's Up. What's remarkable about that first song is that it's about the earth and pollution, and it was 35 years ago. It's about the earth dying. It's about pollution and where we're headed in the environment 35 years ago. This album will surprise you for how much it's singing about things that 35 years ago, it's like these things are still relevant in a lot of ways, if not more, and very predictive. We'll see that as we go through more and more. So then, after that, we get to History Lesson, track 2, which is just an instrumental poetry piece. And this album has 15 tracks, but really there's 12 songs, and then I would say there's 3 interludes. And that's one of the things about Time's Up. It has these little kind of, you go into something and then you go into the next album, something that I would experience on other bands and musicians, guys like the Beastie Boys that would go into these things. And I'm sure in hip hop and rap, which I'm not well versed in, there's a lot of, especially in rap, there was the skits and the scenes and dialogue that was like, you'd break away from the song and then it would come into something else. But this was like a notion of like a piece of music fading into the next, taking a little interlude, a little moment before we launch in the next one. But this is where I'm being taught things. In Cult of Personality, I'm hearing this like history lesson, all the stuff that he's saying in the lyrics there, this idea of cult of personality, and talking about Stalin, Mussolini, and all these people. And I'm already, they just seem so well educated to me. And then history lesson, have this voice coming in Africa. We are wearing the name of our master. It's all these things that I'm just this 12-year-old kid, and I'm going, okay, sounds rough, like just no clue of the gravity, the heaviness of the stuff that I'm being given. And this theme would continue with more and more bands as I would learn more about other cultures and artists and history and oppression and just how different my childhood was from everyone else's. And that's the power of music, right? You're opening up the eyes of this 12-year-old kid in his house, and he's going, oh shit, I'm lucky. I have it so easy in a lot of ways. And those lessons are laid at a very young age. And I appreciate it. And I'm thankful for it. And I'm here sharing that with you. Then we get to Pride. This is a killer song. One of the best on the album, I think. Pride is an amazing song. And that line, history is a lie they teach you in school. Ooh, wow. These notions are going so over my head at a young age that I'm going to school and I'm being taught lies. History's been bastardized and messed up. But that line, that lyric, drummer Will Calhoun had written in a notebook when he was growing up, and he'd found it while they were working on the album, and it really puts together this what this piece of music about. Just remarkable guitar work. And that was one of the things that really stood out to me by Vernon Reid, is he was an incredible guitar player, and this is before I get my first guitar, but his style of playing, he was obviously so good at soloing and switching genres and making different sounds with his guitar. But the riffs on this album are very, very memorable. And Pride is a killer song. So here we get to Love Rears Its Ugly Head. I sing my heart out when the song comes on in my car where I'm listening to it. And this is that one. It's just so good. So good. And you couldn't necessarily put on a song that's like Love Rears Its Ugly Head, like a similar style. And I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, I love that because I love this, the sound. This is in my heart. This song is in my heart and in my history. And when I was a kid, I was singing along to this song about love and relationships and the falling apart and marriage and things not working out and just the hardships of being in and out of love. And I didn't know what any of this really meant at the time, but the passion, the sounds, the orchestration, there's this part where it just goes ba-dum with that horn. Oof. I just listened to it like on the drive home, and I was still like, God, this song is so incredible. I'm definitely going to be making a video about it, probably mocking the fact of being a kid and singing along like I knew what he was talking about. There was something I was going to say, the Love Rears Its Ugly Head. It takes a sample from the song Lush Life by Nat King Cole. I didn't know that. And then check this out. I do remember the music video. It says the music video features Cynthia Bailey of Real Housewives of Atlanta fame. So how about that? Somebody who went on to become, I've never seen that show, so I don't know, but she's in the music video. But if this song, if I were to hear, if I was to be in the car with you and I was to put this on, this would probably be one of those ones you'd be like, wow, Jacob likes this? Interesting. But there you go. Love Rears Its Ugly Head. I apologize. I've had to stop and take several drinks of water. We've been in a rainy season, and then it'll get warm again. And so the pollen and the allergies in the air is just out of control. And this afternoon, I have just absolutely felt it because we had rain, and then it's just gone back and forth. And so the air outside is killing me. And so I've had to stop and start a lot of times while talking. So I apologize if it's gotten a little choppy along the way, but I'm trying to keep it together. New Jack theme. New Jack, that's such a late 80s, early 90s term. New Jack City, New Jack Swing. This is New York. This is a term, that I gather New Jack comes from this idea of like being the rookie big shot, the one who's running the show. You had the New Jack Swing sound, and then New Jack theme is this up-tempo rock song with kind of this like kind of siren-y type guitar in it. And it just sounds like somebody who's like running the streets, drunk on power, and, you know, almost preparing the listener for this isn't going to last forever, but it's the time of the New Jack theme. Then we get to Someone Like You. Again, heavier subjects in here. You know, he sings that whole, it's like, it starts out with this more upbeat, up-tempo verse, and then the chorus, I know what to do with someone like you. And he does that whole line about police killing his brother. And it's just these dark subjects about police brutality. And so much of this, when I'm growing up, I'm just probably not paying attention to I heard those lines and I was like, wow. But again, not being a strong lyrics person and just hearing the sound, I'm probably just sitting there bopping along, Someone Like You, and not really comprehending at the time that this is really breaking into police brutality and just how horrible these guys are coming from New York, and they're dealing with this shit, and they've been dealing with it since they were kids, and they still deal with it today. I'm being introduced to themes and ideas and genres of music that I wasn't aware of. And my ears are being opened up to so many more ideas and thoughts about where people are coming from in their life and in their world. And I really was sheltered. You know, I was a sheltered kid going to a Methodist church, and the level of my problems in my life were nothing in comparison to kids that are growing up in the inner city and dealing with violence and police brutality and gangs and hardships and really hard poverty. So these kind of things are planting seeds in my young brain to start having an understanding about that people come from all sorts of different backgrounds and environments, and never assume that you know anything that anyone has gone through, you know? That's a lesson I think you have to take with you through your life, is to anytime you interact with anybody, you just don't know their story, you know? Being judgmental is just wasted energy. If you see somebody that I don't know, like, it doesn't happen as much anymore, especially for me in California, because people out here, I think, are much more accepting of how people are. But whenever I talk to an older person, like an aunt, an uncle, somebody who's, you know, boomer, and they talk about how they don't like how this person dresses, their tattoos, their piercings, or whatever it is. I've tried to talk about, like, you don't know what that person's been through, or you don't know where they're coming from. It's just such wasted energy to really worry about what anybody else is doing, especially if it doesn't affect you at all. And to have an opinion on whether you like it or you don't like it, it's like, I don't know. Okay, so you don't like it. You know what I mean? Like, okay, that's not for you. But you just don't know that person's story. You don't know anything about why they do the things that they do. You don't know if the clothes that they wear are all they have. You don't know if the style that they put on is because they feel alone and isolated and depressed, and the only way they find kind of a sense of purpose is to stand out in the crowd. You don't know if there's history of abuse or violence. You don't know if they came from a home of an alcoholic or a drug addict. You don't know if they were abandoned. You just don't know. Everybody on this whole planet, everybody's got a story, right? Everybody's just doing their best to get by. And it's wasted energy to sit there and worry or concern yourself about what somebody is or isn't doing that you like or you don't like, if it doesn't affect your life in any way. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to get on a soapbox. I'm just trying to say, like, grace, patience. Look at those around you with a sense of, we're the same, you know? Like, what if when we die, we find out that all of us are just like one giant soul? And every time that you looked at somebody else and you kind of had something like judgmental or a feeling of like, I hate that, or I don't like that about the person. What if you end up in the afterlife and we all merge together and we're just one giant soul? And you're like, I was just criticizing me. You know what I mean? Like, I am that person. We're all one. We are all the same. We are all together in this. I don't know. It's just worth thinking about. There's just so much separation in this world. And I think about being a kid, and I think about Living Color, and I think about the struggles that this band had to endure. Because Vernon Reid has gone on record and said that, to get back on point, Jacob, calm down with your... Back when I was a Christian, I was going to become a preacher. I was going to become a pastor. So I did want to speak in front of people at one point in time and try to give them reasons to love in your heart. But back to the album. just forgive me. I have feelings. Vernon Reid talked about how they got signed because Mick Jagger saw them at CBGB's, liked them, put his, played like harmonica and sang some vocals on that first album and some songs. And that's really what moved him into the line with Epic Records and got them a deal. And Vernon Reid expressed in an interview like he was frustrated by that. And you might be like, why? Well, he's saying it took Mick Jagger, the guy who's like pretty much known for establishing so much of rock and roll, it took that guy to vouch for them to be taken seriously, because they had been trying, playing, building stage shows with amazing lights and production. They were all incredibly talented. Vernon Reid was a legendary New York guitar player. He was playing along with like a jazz group at the time, and that's what he had a reputation for. He was playing with this jazz group. And so he was part of a really talented group of New York musicians. And then we've got guys like Will Calhoun, who was graduated with honors from Berklee School of Music as a drummer. These are top of their game, great songwriters. And they're out there waiting for somebody to be like, hey, you guys deserve to have a shot. But it took Mick Jagger, which is a great thing, got them there. But from his perspective, he was like, so it took this guy to vouch for us, for you to take us seriously. So our journeys are different. You never know what, these bands that got success that were starting to play at that time. And was it nepotism? Were they taken seriously because they looked a certain way, because the color of their skin, or because the label was like, hey, we need to sign rock artists that look the part, that are white guys. We don't want these guys. We don't know how to market these guys. It's worth thinking about. This is 2025, but this was 1987, 88. Very different time. And those guys would still have those feelings from back then all the way till today. Anyway, oh my God. I'm sorry. Soapbox episode. I had it in my notes. Vernon rose to prominence in New York City as part of Ronald Shannon Jackson's avant jazz rock band, the Decoding Society. So he was part of that. All right, let's keep going with the tracks. Then we get to Elvis is Dead, featuring Little Richard. It also features a very famous Maceo Parker on saxophone. Elvis is Dead. This really brings back memories too, because I remember with my brother and I, we were singing Elvis is Dead. It starts out, he goes, yo, Corey, man. Yeah, man, what's up? I saw Elvis the other day. Yeah, get out of here, man. That's how it opens up. And this was such a fun song that I was singing along, and we were rocking out to Elvis is Dead. And then I listened to it with fresh ears at my age now, at 46, all these years later. And I thought of so many things about what this song really is about. Here's something crazy for you. This album releases in 1990. Elvis dies in 1977. And for most of us, I was born in 78. When I'm a little kid, Elvis seems like something long in the past, right? Because you see the black and white footage, he's dead. And to my young mind in the 1980s, it's like, oh, he's from the past. But if we're looking solely at how many years had it been since Elvis had died when this album came out, it had only been 13 years. And when they were writing it, 12 years. That's not that long ago to have this person be the center of a song that for us as kids, we're going like, well, Elvis is long gone, and what's the big deal? But think about this. This is like going back to somebody who died in 2012, 2013. A celebrity, somebody we all know, somebody famous dying, and then there being a lot of speculation about them still being alive. It would still very much be a part of our culture and our conversation for people that it was more, like that they lived through the time that Elvis was alive. And also, Elvis has this strange relationship with, Black culture, African American culture, with being this person who got so much fame and success for bringing rock and roll to the masses. But we know for a fact that his youth, where he grew up, and in the culture that he was around, it really came from the gospel and the church and the singing along with all of this. He had a tremendous amount of respect. So I don't necessarily think that the blame falls on Elvis for that. I think it's one of those touchstone moments in history where Black musicians and Black rock musicians are like, here's this person that is elevated up on a pedestal, so much so while we have to be like, hi, over here. And even after he's dead, people are still fixated on him still being alive and his relevance even long after he's gone. So there's a lot of complicated emotions in that. But it features Little Richard singing on the song, and then this saxophone master that they have, Maceo Parker. Now, I'm not a fan of the saxophone. It's my least favorite instrument. I usually just don't like it in cheesy music, but it can be used effectively. I don't mind a New York saxophone that's like on Christmas, that's playing like Silent Night or something like that. But I don't normally like saxophone in music. And so whenever it pops up, I'm always like, But sometimes it can be used effectively. And I think it's used effectively in that song. There's a couple other things. Living Color adapted lyrics from 2 previous songs. So maybe I have a reason to believe we all will be received at Graceland. From Paul Simon's Graceland, they changed it to, I've got a reason to believe that we all won't be received at Graceland. And then they also quote Public Enemy's Fight the Power in stating Elvis was a hero to most, but again, twisted the line to, but he never meant shit to me, but that's beside the point. Anyway, so those I thought that were pretty interesting things that they borrowed from those 2 lyrics to put in the song. Elvis is dead. Elvis has left the building. All right. I've been talking for a while because I've been preaching at you, for God's sakes, and struggling with this allergies here, but we're going to keep going. We're going to keep moving forward. Type. This song, great, good rocking song, but I think the standout thing that I remember is the breakdown when they get to everything that goes around comes around at the end. And it just keeps going and building, and Corey Glover comes in with his great voice, and he's just getting more and more and more into it. And that's really the standout part about Type for me. A great song. Really, there's not a lot that you skip on this album except for maybe the interludes. I'm not always in the mood for necessarily just these connections. Now, if I was wanting to listen to Time's Up as a cohesive album and I was just letting it take me there, then sure. But if I'm in the car, I'm just going to go to the 12 tracks on the album. Okay, then we get to Under Cover of Darkness. This features Queen Latifah doing the little rap there in the middle of the song. In 1990, I have no idea who Queen Latifah is. I mean, maybe I'll hear her name on Yo MTV Raps at some point in time. But this song is about safe sex. And, again, young Jakey listening to this song about rubbing our bodies together, but being safe about it. But this is 89, 90. This is the AIDS crisis is big. And anytime an artist was willing to write a song reminding people to be safe out there and to protect themselves and to talk about sex positivity and taking care of themselves and others and just having, especially in the song, they're talking about the men being dogs and sleeping around and then spreading disease. And so that was something that went right over my head. Again, as a kid, but that's what Under Cover of Darkness is about. A lot of jazzy guitar work in this one, whereas if you were to isolate a lot of the jazzy kind of sounds in this, I would be like, not my cup of tea. But the song's good, but those things. That leads us into the jazzy instrumentalology. It's got the organ, the instruments all playing all these sounds. It's kind of chaotic, kind of claustrophobic. So meant to be there for the album, but that's all that is. And then we get to the end of the album. These are some of my favorite songs of the album. So Fight the Fight, like I talked to you about at the beginning, I remember right at the end where it cuts off. But what's so impressive about this song is the guitar is just incredible. Vernon Reid is doing those slow volume fade-ins at the beginning. I mean, he's definitely one of those guitar players that when I asked for a guitar, I was like, I want to be able to learn how to play like that guy, which is easier said than done because he's so fucking good. One, he had that ability to solo so frantically that it almost sounded like he was playing more notes than were available on the guitar. Like his finger was like playing a note that was on the fret itself. I mean, on the like not in between the spaces. You know what I'm talking about. He just sounded like he was cramming in 1,800 notes in a place in a solo. And then he would slow it down with like whammy bars and swells and rises and stuff like that. He just had an incredible ability to do these like shredding all over the neck solos. And then he had such beautiful control over his instrument. And really an impressive guitar player to this day. Vernon Reid, you're phenomenal. Fight the Fight. That I have so many memories of feeling that chorus, fight the fight, we're all in the same war, and just feeling the welling up of my chest of like, yes. There were a lot of those moments growing up as a kid where you talk about battle and fighting and you just kind of feel your chest pop up and you're like, we're going to do this. I remember doing that with Gods of War by Def Leppard. You just want to. Then we have another music interlude, but this one's worth mentioning because it features Dougie Fresh, the legendary beatboxer, hip-hop artist. He is on this with them, tag team partners. That's what it is. It's just kind of this little musical instrumental piece that goes through, and then they come in and they're doing the beatboxing, and they say tag team partners, and then we're out. So that's another guest on the episode. Not on the episode, I mean on the album. All right, then we get to Solace of You. Now, this is very, very reggae, Caribbean, definitely not a type of music that I would normally enjoy, but I really like the sweet, glassy, watery guitar on this one. And as a young child, I would always say Solace of You. Even though I heard Corey Glover in the song say Solace of You, he sang it like that, but when I would read it, I wasn't familiar with the word solace yet. And I remember thinking it was said like the solace of you, solace of you. Just pretty funny. But I'll always remember thinking it like that. Then we get to the end of the album, which is, I got to tell you, This Is the Life. This one got me today, and it used to get me back then too. This song is about that tendency to dream about another life that you could have had. Your mind takes you to if I had done this, this would be better. If I had only done this, then I would be here. If I'd only been born with more money, more opportunity, if I'd been rich, if only I had this happen, then what would that be like? That is a dangerous, exhausting mental exercise that I have done so much in my life. And I would say that only because of this new chapter that began when I was 43 has it started to quell a little bit. But I spent so many years thinking if I'd only done X, Y, and Z, then I'd be happy. If I'd only done 1, 2, 3, then things would be better. And I would look around and I would compare my life to friends of mine that were from college or people that I met that moved to LA and became successful actors. Or doing stand-up and seeing comedians rise up and get things. Or musicians having their bands signed and just being envious. Being envious of money, wealth, fame, all of those things. And daydreaming. it infected my mind so much that when I was young, I actually even wrote a script about a person going back in time and changing these things. And that's not the first time that that's been done. Obviously, there's been a lot of movies about, like, you know, everything from Back to the Future to the comedic versions, dramatic versions, where you go back and you change one little detail about your life and then everything's different in the future. That I had my own version of that, because even from a young age, I started to obsess over, if I had done this one thing when I was a senior in high school, then things would be better. I only tell you this because it can still happen, you know? And I just want to be straight with you. I want to shoot straight with you. The fulfillment I'm receiving now isn't monetarily. It isn't at all. People ask me all the time. They're like, oh, are you like a big time influencer now? Are you making a lot of money? No, I'm really not. I'm telling you, I'm being so honest with you and shooting straight with you. I met an influencer the other day, talked to, and he said, oh yeah, I'm going to probably be able to quit my full-time job soon. And I looked at him and I said, how? How are you able to do that? And we talked for a little while. And one thing that I began to figure out about my videos and the stuff that I've made is that what you all know me for is nostalgia. And a lot of these businesses that are paying a lot of money to have ads, or really, really these apps that are promoting and you're getting brand deals and all that stuff, if you're dealing with nostalgia, they don't really know what to do with you, because it's very hard to advertise for something in the past. Whereas if I made so many videos about me playing guitar, well, a lot of music companies and guitar companies can absolutely find a way to promote on that, and you can have success in that. Or, if I focused on other aspects of my life that were day-to-day stuff that could change things. But because I focus on music in the past, I do talk about modern musicians. I had, War on Women, Shauna Potter on here, and I talk about my top albums of 2024, and I'll be doing 2025, and I talk about new bands that I'm into, but not enough for it to really change my life in terms of finances. So I've been given more than I could have ever imagined in terms of opportunity. The opportunity to go to concerts and festivals, the opportunity to meet heroes, to interview them, to have them on the show, the opportunity to go to a rock concert and be recognized as who I am, being stopped in public and people being like, oh, I like your videos. That's been amazing. That's been a dream come true. But I haven't made it to this place where I'm like, oh yeah, I just bought another car, got my second house. I'm just raking it in. That's not it at all. The reward of all of this has been that I have this community and that we get to talk about music, and music has filled a void in my heart, and entertaining has filled a void in my heart. And I've reached this time in my life in my mid-40s where I'm able to give happiness and give joy and give passion. And because I do that, people say, thank you for making my day better. And that's it. That's the reward. And that's really what has prevented me from feeling like I did for so much of my life about, in another life, I would be so much happier. Now, don't get me wrong. I still look at others who are successful. I look at others that have things that I would consider to be better than me. And of course, it's the envy. Of course, it's the want. But for the first time in my life, that syndrome of always looking around and being in comparative living has started to finally quiet. And as I listened to the car this morning, and I heard him say, this is the life you have. This is the life you have. I remember that moving me at 12, and it moved me at 46. This is the life you have. This is the life. Still gets me, because it's a good reminder. This is it. This is it. This is what you got. Take the good, take the bad. But when you step back for a second, and probably right around this age is where I started to first really have those moments of kind of sensing myself in my body and realizing that I'm there. I don't know if I've ever talked about that on the podcast before. My mother calls them, this is very cute, she calls them I'm a me feelings. But at a young age where you start to kind of have this awareness of your consciousness in your body, you start to suddenly, look, it happens as soon as you point it out. As soon as you start to think about it, then you realize you're like, oh my God, I'm in my body. I'm this person. Now, see, it's happening to me right now as I'm saying it. As soon as you start to observe it, it becomes so clear. And this is the life you have, is that echoing phrase that he's singing in the song that Living Color is giving to us, that hits me, and I hope it hits you, is that this is the life you have. You gotta do what you can with it. You're not going to be able to wake up tomorrow and be somebody else. You've only got you. And I think that's an important message from this song. And I think I got really, I don't know, guys, I got into a lot of feelings on this one because it took me back to a time in my life, a youth of before maturity, before going through love and loss and depth and leaving Oklahoma. And I was a young kid. And then I revisit it now and I just am like, wow, all these notions and ideas and thoughts and music styles and things that were being introduced and shared with me in my brain they've remained. And when I hear this is the life you have, it still makes me feel all the feels. But that, ladies and gentlemen, was Living Color's Time's Up. I hope you enjoyed it. Of course, if you watch on YouTube, I can't play the song snippets on YouTube because they will flag it and it gets all complicated. But on the audio version, I always try to include those little audio snippets so that you can experience a little bit about what I'm talking about. And I can only do that because Pantheon helps me be able to protect myself in case they try to shut this podcast down, if you were wondering. That's why my early episodes don't have it, and then the later ones do, which I thought about going back and doing some of those early episodes where I couldn't play the songs. Siamese Dream, Smashing Pumpkins, do you know how bad I want to do an episode where I talk about it and then I show a clip or a moment? So I've thought about revisiting some of those as kind of a part 2. And if you're okay with that, let me know. But I think I'd like to do that at some point in time. Anyway, Living Colors Time's Up was produced by Ed Stasium. He also produced the Ramones, Motorhead, Talking Heads, the Smithereens. They recorded most of the album in LA, even though they were a New York band, so that was unusual for them at the time. They were hanging out with Fishbone while they were here. And so those were some of the notes that I took down, but I just wanted to take you back to the time. And thank you for putting up with the congestion that I'm dealing with while I'm recording this. I hope it's not too annoying to your ears. All right, let's wrap this puppy up. So before I forget, let's just talk a little bit about making sure you share this show with people, let people know about it. I need this audience to continue to grow if we're going to move forward, and got some exciting guests on the horizon. Don't forget to use distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. Get 30% off your first year of uploading your music on DistroKid. And of course, all the love to Pantheon Podcasts for putting me on their network and helping support me and giving me tools and creation tools and ways to really grow this podcast. And they have a tremendous amount of shows on their network, including Waterproof Records. So I'm super grateful to Pantheon Podcasts. So thank you for being there for me and helping this show grow. And thank you for being here for so long. This was episode 78. I can't believe it. Before we know it, we're going to cross that first 100 episodes. But by then, I am hoping that this show will have its first live theater. Let's make that our goal. By show 100, Waterproof Records performs on stage with guests, and we do something really, really cool for that. Right? Let's make it happen. All right, y'all. I was rocking my Russian Circle shirt today, which I love, with the tree. I think it's so cool. But I'll see you out there. It's the shows, the festivals. We've got a cool year ahead of some exciting things, and I'll be talking to you about it here on Waterproof Records. So thanks for joining me. I've been your host, Jacob Givens, and this has been Living Colors Time's Up, and we'll talk to you soon. I'll see you later. Bye.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna
Water-breathing rabbit.